And that's the risk if that doesn't happening. If you get the people out of step with the political leadership, that is a big problem. And right now, we have a world where there are so many issues going on. You know, the challenge is to show people this climate issue is still not merely very serious, because I think people understand that, but that there are real practical solutions that can make a difference. And, you know, yes, we'll adapt and adjust as we go, but we cannot afford not to act on this issue.
And change happens with effective leadership, I suppose.
It's always about the leaders being prepared to lead. And the thing that you realize in politics after a long period of time, I mean, it's a statement of the obvious. It is about leadership, but that's being willing to say things that people don't want to hear, as well as things that they do want to hear. Because, you know, I always say to people, the first test of leadership is whether you're prepared to get up in front of your own side and say things that make them feel uncomfortable. Because anyone can get up and tell them what they want to hear. So this is why leadership is about that quality, but it's also, and here's the thing that's so important with climate change, you've got to have solutions that work. You know, where people say, you're not asking me to sacrifice my economy in order to improve the climate. Here's a way we improve the economy by meeting the challenge of climate. And this is, I think, the challenge now.
Let me just follow up with a question on a report that has been published by your institute, the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. It's called The Climate Paradox: Why We Need to Reset Action on Climate Change. It has drawn a lot of media attention and also criticism. In your foreword, you say that any strategy based on either phasing out fossil fuels in the short term or limiting consumption is a strategy doomed to fail. What was the objective to publish that book, and how do you answer how do you respond to your critics?
So let's go to the heart of this thing, which is that the paradox is that it's more obvious to people than ever before that climate's changing. You can be in virtually any country in the world today and people notice a change in their climate. The problem is that in the politics around this, people are doubting whether we have the solutions that can deal with this problem. And the issue has changed because whereas when I was first operating on this issue, the majority of emissions would still come from America and Europe, today what we know is the historic source of the emissions is with the Western world, but the actual emissions that are rising now are rising in the developing world, in China, in India, Southeast Asia. We've still got Africa yet to develop. And so the question is not just about how we take action in countries like the UK or Austria or even in the USA, but how we allow these countries to develop, but do so sustainably. And really what we're saying is, look, in the short term, we know because we can see it, there's still a demand for fossil fuels. So what does that mean in terms of the policy mix? It means, yes, of course, ultimately, we have to end reliance on fossil fuel, on oil, gas, coal, and so on. That's clear and sure. In the short term, because the 2030s is going to be a very critical decade for climate change, we've got to put some other tools in the toolbox. So, for example, carbon capture and storage, direct carbon capture, where the IEA reckon there are technology solutions coming close to fulfillment there, nature-based solutions. What you saw up on your screen a short time ago about food waste, about the role of agriculture in climate change, about afforestation, right? And also you've got mangroves, you've got the seabed, you've got nature's way of also storing, taking carbon out of the atmosphere. And then you've got a lot of technology that there is. AI, for example, can allow us to do our grids much more effectively. We could be consuming energy much more effectively. And then you've got new things like nuclear fusion, nuclear power, and so on. And then the final point, which is absolutely vital, because if the developed world's emissions go down, but the developing world's emissions go up, then the climate doesn't really care where the emissions come from. So the final part of this is that we propose new methods of financing clean energy in the developing world. If you take, it's true that there's been a massive boost to renewables. That's true. But the majority of investment in these last few years has been going to the developed world. And we need it to go to the developing world, where the amount of investment's actually been falling. So we suggest new ways of financing that developing world clean energy. Because in the end, these countries, especially in the poorest parts of the world, they're going to develop. So our job is to not just show, but to help them develop sustainably. Otherwise, we could win the battle in the developed world and lose it in the developing world, and that's not good for the climate or good for any of us.
Thank you. Governor Schwarzenegger, terminating fossil fuels is also one of your key messages, short-term, medium-term maybe. How do we do that? What is the best way of going about it? Not whining, that much we understood. Is it incentives, limits, taxes? What's your message?
Well, I think that I agree with everything that Tony said. It's very thoughtful. And I would just add that it is very important to recognize that we need to win the people over. Because without the people understanding the issue, we cannot get them behind the movement. We have to create a people's movement. And it's no different than the fitness movement. When I was promoting fitness in the 70s, people had no interest in bodybuilding because they thought it is about a guy that stands on stage and is oiled up and is shaking up there and is doing a pose. And they thought that was it. And I was talking more about that everyone should be working out with weights. It doesn't matter which sport you do, and it's healthy and it makes you fit and so on. And so when I hired a publicist to promote bodybuilding, he said to me, he says, you got to change the word bodybuilding. Can't go run around and say to people they should do bodybuilding because they think that you're standing on stage oiled up. And that's not what most of the people want. He says, I said, so what do you think? He said, you should call it maybe resistance training. And then I said, okay, let's go and talk about resistance training. The more I talked about resistance training, the more people found it fascinating. And all the talk shows had me come on and show how to exercise with a woman together with some other guy and to show resistance training. And all of a sudden, the whole thing started getting to become very popular. And in the 80s, all of a sudden, it was a huge explosion. And now, when you look back and when you look at it, we have a gymnasium in every hotel in the world. We have a weight room in every military base. Every fire station has a weight room. Every police station, every university, every high school, every sports team. Everyone is working out. And it's all because we changed the language and we made it more clear of what it is. And the same has to happen with the pollution. We can't go around and say this is climate change because no one understands what the hell we're talking about. When you go down on Fifth Avenue in New York and you ask 100 people, give me a definition of climate change, you will hear 100 different answers. So that means that you're not having these people on board. So what I'm saying is that we should just find a word and study this issue. We in California were successful, for instance, by using the word terminating pollution, because everyone understood pollution. Because Ronald Reagan was a Republican who created the Air Resources Board in California, which was the board that we used in order to accomplish all of our goals. It's an independent board. So the legislators pass the law, the governor signs it, and then it goes to the Air Resources Board. And so, but he never talked about climate change, Ronald Reagan. He created the Air Resources Board by saying, Nancy and I, we hate the pollution. We have tears in our eyes in the morning when we get up, and it's unacceptable. We can do better than that. And President Nixon, right after that, when he was president, created the EPA in Washington, the Environmental Protection Agency. Again, under the auspices of, we got to get rid of pollution, not climate change. Climate change is something that environmentalists came up with later on to be cutesy-wootsy. But I mean, it really doesn't do the job. because you got to talk about cutting pollution, because climate change is not killing millions of people. It's killing some people because of the fires and the floods and the storms and all of this, but not the millions of people that are dying every year, which is because of pollution.
So we have to learn how to communicate
the right way. So this is why it is important for everyone to communicate and to talk about we got to go and get rid of pollution, rather than talking about climate change and the climate this. I mean, I heard the President of the United States, going on and give a speech at the State of the Union address. It was Biden, and he says, let me talk a little bit about climate. Let me talk a little bit about climate. What are you talking about? Why not just say, let me talk a little bit about how we have to reduce pollution and talk about pollution? That's the enemy. Climate, to have a president spend 5 minutes on talking about climate, the world is listening, this is the best kind of exposure you can get, rather than talking about pollution. Fossil fuels cause pollution. We got to go and switch out fossil fuels with renewable energy so that we can breathe. And we in California showed a commercial to the people on television. It was of a child which was given to us by the American Lung Association, of a child with an inhaler. And then eventually passing out. This is what we do to our children because of pollution. That's what the ad said. I tell you, the numbers changed immediately, and everything from then on that I wanted, that people voted for it. So this is what I'm talking about. We got to go and think about the communication rather than the technical aspect alone. The technical aspect is very important, but we got to also talk about how do we communicate.
How to get it across to the people. We've just got very little time here, but I'd like to talk about, you're a great communicator. I'd like to talk about your recent book on leadership, which has come out last year. It has now also come out in German. Why did you write it, and what would you recommend to today's political leaders?
Just before I answer, I can't resist. I mean, Arnold's absolutely right. It's got to be a people's issue. And when he was talking about when he started with the bodybuilding, I remember sitting with my wife watching one of the films. Was maybe Conan? Is it? Which is the one?
Yeah, Conan, maybe.
Yeah, Conan, maybe. And my wife's looking at the screen. She says, "You've got to look more like that," she says. So I take his advice. Right, I'm getting in the gym. About 2 weeks later, I say, "Okay, darling, come on." She says, "You got to get back in there again." So I'm afraid I never ended up looking like you, but it's you can't get everything in life. Now I wrote the book on leadership so that other people profit from my mistakes. I always think, you learn more from your mistakes than you ever do from your successes. And one of the things which is relevant to this issue is it's a great thing to be an activist on an issue. But the question is when you can turn the activism, the campaigning, into the practical policy solution. And if there's any lesson for today's leader on the climate issue, it is, in the end, you've got to go deep to be able to get the solutions that are really going to work. And you've got to understand that ultimately, leadership, and I say this in the book, and it's a very strange thing to say. When I said this first, people thought, I don't know, he's talking about being out of office too long. I said, the job of a leader in a democracy is not to give people what they want. They're like, what do you mean it's not to give people what they want? And I say, no, the job of a leader in a democracy is to ask what people need and then persuade them that it is what they want, right? And in the end, people do want a pollution-free world. They want that. And the job of the leader is to persuade them that what they want can be achieved also by what they need, which are the practical policy solutions to get there. and that we're not asking people to go and sacrifice their lives. We're actually asking people to come together in pursuit of a solution that will change their lives and change their lives for the better. And there's one other thing that I learned all my political life, which is, in the end, today, it doesn't matter how big your country is, how powerful your country is. Ultimately, there are problems that the world has got to solve together. So whatever the geopolitical differences, whatever the disputes are, whatever the differences of ideology and ideas and leadership and tensions, in the end, on some issues, the world has to work together. And this is an issue where we have to ensure that those big major countries that are coming up through the developing world are in dialogue with the major countries in the developed world. And even at the smallest country level, people are in dialogue together so that you can solve this problem together, because it won't be solved by any one country. It's got to be solved by people uniting in action. And the reason why this conference is so important is because the basic message, which is to unite in action, carries the two essential elements for success: unity and doing rather than saying. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's wonderful final words. Fascinating to listen to you. I could go on forever, but we are running out of time. Thank you so much, and a big round of applause for the governor. Thank you, and for Tony Blair. Thank you so much. So, and while we're taking pictures, my next panel has joined me here on stage. Thank you. Tony Blair's book. Steve Wesley, Laura Kunzbeck, Alex Michelson. I will introduce the jury.
We have to follow that?
Panel. Yeah, I know.
How is that fair?
I know, but the governor was talking about communication, and this is what we will be talking about now. Climate action. Has it fallen off the global agenda? Communication, how we talk about it. It's so important, and I think we must admit we have been underperforming a little bit as far as communications is concerned. We have not been that effective, so we try to explore the roles of journalism, of finance, and the economy in this panel and create a positive narrative. Laura Kunzbeck, I'd like to start with you. Just 2 sentences to introduce you. An award-winning journalist with the BBC, the host of the BBC's flagship weekend news show. You are an observer of national and international trends and developments. Has climate fallen off the agenda?
Hi, thanks so much for asking us to be here. Not sure about following those two, so we will do our best. It's faded because of bigger political changes. It hasn't disappeared, but it's definitely faded. And I think many people in the UK and in other parts of Europe and around the world just go, you know what, there's so many things that are difficult for me right now. When someone comes into my life and says, you must do this or you must do that, and it might cost you more, they think, not right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what's the consequence? What do we do?
Well, I suppose I think there are 2 big long-term issues, and there's one very direct current issue. Long-term, as we heard the governor saying, people who care about the environment haven't always been great about talking it in real-life terms. It's a long-term issue. How does it affect me right now? Secondly, if you take, for example, one of the things they've been trying to do in the UK is get people to put heat pumps in their back garden. They cost £10,000. So it's seen as a luxury for many people. The other thing I think some of the narratives around, if you see the big COP summits or the kinds of things that NGOs and charities talk about, they talk in very doom-laden, scary terms. Mm-hmm. And actually, if you're sitting at home around your kitchen table That might seem frightening, and it also might just seem too big for you to do anything about it. So I think talking about practical solutions, but small things that feel relevant right now, has got to be a better way for politicians to communicate.
Steve Wesley, let's talk about two Americans here. Let's talk about America. You're the founder and CEO of the Wesley Group. It's one of the biggest venture funds in North America. You served on the board of Tesla for 3 years together with Elon Musk, but you also have some political experience. You were controller and chief fiscal officer of the state of California when Arnold was governor in California. Let's talk about the new US administration. It canceled the Paris Agreement, fossil fuels are great, etc., etc. Where does the US stand now in terms of environmental policy?
Look, there's a lot of doom and gloom out there, and I've come to you with a simple message. Get over it. The whole world is moving forward on this. There are 195 countries in the world that have signed on to the Paris protocols. Only 4 are not part of that. Iran, Yemen, Libya, and sadly the United States. But I want you to know, countries all over the United States don't care. We are moving forward. Here's a statistic for all of you to know. Of all new energy that utilities put online last year to power the United States, 90% was renewable. Folks, there are no Marxist utility CEOs in our country. They're putting renewable power in because it is cheaper, it is cleaner, it is more reliable, and you can get it online faster. 10,000 companies have made commitments to get to carbon net neutral. Make no mistake, the US may slow down a little bit, but we will lead the world in green. We are creating the companies that make a massive difference. A lot of people say to me, Steve, no one makes any money in green energy. Our venture firm, we've had 9 IPOs, including Tesla Motors. When I first invested in this thing, electric vehicles, people thought of golf carts. My wife said, you invested in what? Electric, go get our money back. Well, we invested at $2.76 a share. Today, over $250 a share, but it split 32 times. That was a 1,000x returner.
Are you saying drinks is on you tonight?
Yeah. Drinks are on me tonight. I'll be in Berlin, though. So the point is, you can not only do good for the world, but this is one of the fastest growing economic sectors on the planet. Don't be a whiner, be a participant, and it's good investment on top.
Alex Michelson, you're an anchor with Fox 11 News in California, probably the best-known anchor in California, award-winning journalist again, 8 Emmys. And let me point out for the Austrian audience, Fox News is not necessarily what we mostly hear about or see about Fox News, the editorializing evening shows. It's not. It's also straight news, and that's what you do. Now let's talk about California. It's recently become the 4th largest economy in the world. California is going along a different path from the federal government. Can California keep this path of environmental conscious action?
Yes. I mean, I think California is going forward, and I've, spent time traveling with Governor Newsom, and we went to China, and when he was there, his message was, presidents will come and go, but California is committed in a bipartisan way to the issue of the environment. He quotes Republican governors, including Arnold Schwarzenegger, but also Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan, who both were Californians, who were very focused on the issue of the environment. Richard Nixon created the EPA. Ronald Reagan created a lot of our environmental regulations. And so, California is trying to lead. There is a battle going on, though, right now. California wants to have a law in place in 2035 where there can be no more sale of gas-powered vehicles. And the Senate, the Republican Senate, just worked to try to vote that down. And there's a big battle that's going to happen probably in the Supreme Court over who gets to control that. Whether, as Governor Schwarzenegger said, it really should be the states that get to control this sort of thing, or whether it's going to be the federal government. And so we're seeing a bit of a deja vu of what happened when he was in charge with President Bush in leadership. We have a different Supreme Court now, so that may change things. But broader, though, to the point that Tony Blair made, trade. As much as California wants to act on its own, if there are issues that are national issues, there are issues that are world issues, and so there does need to be a bit of coordination.
Let's get a final round and question to all of you. This coming fall, we will celebrate, if you want, the 10-year anniversary of the Paris Agreement. Does any one of you, and just like a yes and no, does any one of you think we will reach the targets?
No.
Well, there was research out yesterday said that we might breach the target even earlier than people thought in the New Scientist, so it doesn't look that way.
I think we will. Let me give all of you one ray of hope. China, last year, which a lot of people talk about as the world's largest polluter, put online more solar and wind than the rest of the world combined last year, times 2. It was announced just a week ago that China, for the first time since COVID, is actually reducing its carbon waste, exhaust, 1% a year. I think this number may go down. They got the message on wind, they got the message on solar, they got the message on batteries. Now they're leading the world on EVs. The rest of us need to follow.
You think we might not reach it, but how can we protect the people from the consequences if we don't?
Well, I just want to kind of expand upon what Governor Schwarzenegger was talking about in terms of thinking about this issue in a bit of a different way. I think part of the challenge when you think about people, especially from my generation, is there's such a trust deficit in terms of what leaders have told them. So if you're somebody that's my age, think about our lifetime. We were told there are weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. There wasn't. We were told that the subprime mortgages would be fine. They weren't. We were told that you take this vaccine and it'll protect you from COVID, you won't be able to give it to anybody else. That wasn't really true. Americans were told, Joe Biden's not that old, don't worry about that. Immigration's not an issue, inflation's not an issue. And time again, people were told stuff and then they realized maybe that's not true. So this idea that people can just be quote unquote lectured by a bunch of experts on climate issues may not work because a lot of people, there's a trust deficit. So the way that you build trust is by letting people see with their own eyes and come to that own conclusion. Part of the challenge on some of the climate issues is when you're talking about the air and you can't see it, it's hard for people to grasp it. But for TV and for social media, having something that people can grasp, can see, can understand is really important. So seeing the concrete changes, literally the concrete they'll be talking about later, seeing gas prices go down, seeing things on how it impacts people's everyday lives, seeing water literally be cleaner, that can make a difference. And so when we talk about these things, I think we need to think about visual representations for people so they can see how their life is changing and then they get behind it. Simply the concept of trust me doesn't really work right now, but together, if we're creative, we can find a way to show people so that they start believing it themselves.
Very, very short final question to you, Laura. Rebuilding trust, how can we do that as journalists?
Well, I think it's show and tell. So whether as journalists, that's for us to show people how the sausage is made, right? Doesn't always look that pretty, but being transparent about what we know and how we know it. I think there's a challenge where we're trying to do that very overtly at the BBC. Actually, we have a whole new thing called BBC Verify, where we are showing people how we find out the things we know. We're showing our workings.
Transparency.
Because trust in journalists matters as well, right? Trust in politicians has been so stretched and broken in the last few decades in the time that I've been doing this kind of job. And that has also been matched and sometimes deliberately undermined by some politicians, that trust in the MSM or whatever you want to call it. So transparency, showing your workings, and show and tell for us and the political leaders.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
The Governor and Tony Blair have taken up so much time today. Thank you. Thank you. I will stay. Hello and welcome to my next panel. Building for Tomorrow is our topic. And again, I'll just introduce you by name. First, Wopke Hoekstra, Nolik Forrest and Marta Sjögren. We will discuss in more detail what companies have already been able to do in combating climate change and what strategies they use, which solutions can we find. It's finally all about solutions. The industrial sector, one of the main CO2 emitters globally, faces huge challenges, but also opportunities to become climate neutral. I will start with you, Wopke Hoekstra. EU Commissioner for Climate Action, correctly, it's for climate, net zero and clean growth. You also served in the former commission of Ursula von der Leyen. You were finance minister and foreign minister of the Netherlands. We just heard climate action is still on the agenda also in the United States. The EU has adjusted its policy from the Green Deal to the Clean Industrial Deal, as it's called now. Is the Green Deal with a focus of getting climate neutral by 2050, is that dead?
Rather on the contrary, but let me start by saying that it is amazing to be here, and that I think the main takeaway message for me is what Arnold Schwarzenegger said: stop whining, start do something. I think that is an inspiration to all of us, certainly all of us in Europe and in Brussels as well. To your question, no, clearly we will need to continue with climate action. But the trick here is the ambition that we have is making sure that decarbonization is no longer something we do in isolation just for climate. If we want to be successful, it is absolutely imperative that we marry this, that we marry climate action with competitiveness and with independence. And frankly speaking, Europe needs all three. We need it for climate reasons, and that I don't need to explain to you. You're all absolutely convinced why that is necessary. Secondly, we do need to make sure that our companies are actually successful in this transformation on European soil. And third, if we have learned one lesson the hard way in the last couple of years, it is to never ever again be dependent on dubious or rogue regimes from outside of the European Union for essential goods like energy. So that is the name of the game.
We are not softening our goals.
On the contrary, we're actually stepping them up, but we do want to do it in a way that takes our people and our businesses along. It will actually make us more successful in the domain of climate action, and that is what we should thrive for.
Nolik Forrest, Nolik, you're Chief Sustainability Officer of Holcim. It's the global leader in innovative and sustainable building solutions with a broad range of clean construction technologies. You will tell us more about it, but also a contributor to climate change. What do you do for a cleaner production at Holcim as far as cement is concerned, as far as everything that you do is concerned?
So at Holcim, we're all about making the built environment make people's lives better. And we're taking a holistic approach, looking at all cycles of the building construction cycle. If you look at the emissions of the built environment, 1/4 happen at the construction phase and is very much linked to the core materials, steel, glass, and cement that go into all of our buildings and roads and hospitals. Then 3/4 of the emissions come from the building in use, so coming from heating, cooling, and powering buildings. And that's where we're offering and developing a whole range of systems that make buildings more energy efficient. But ultimately, we need to develop solutions that create new builds, but also repair and refurbishment. We know that 80% of the building stock in Europe has already been built, and a city like Vienna is a testimony to that. So how do we take that existing building stock and make it more future-proof by refurbishing it to make it more energy efficient? And ultimately, at the end of use, we're driving circular construction to recycle as many building materials as possible back into new building solutions. So we're taking this cross-cutting approach across all parts of the building cycle. So when it comes to the construction phase, and you mentioned cement, cement is a material that we are innovating to basically make net zero, and by 2030 we are going to make cement net zero at scale, thanks to the great partners that are with me on the panel today. The European Union, we have 7 projects right now in partnership with the European Innovation Fund to bring net zero cement. We're going to bring 5 million tons of, we're going to capture 5 million tons of CO2 and create 8 million tons of net zero cement with the work that we're doing with the European Union right now. But also what we're doing is we're putting innovative low emission raw materials into our formulation with partners such as Marta here by my side, that is also enabling us to not only get to net zero, but to actually capture carbon in concrete. So the future that we're looking at today with the technologies at our disposal would mean that every building, every road, every bridge that we build could be a carbon sink. And you're going to hear about how Marta is doing that with her technology. Absolutely.
Yes. Let's listen to Marta. Marta Siergen, entrepreneur and investor committed to building sustainable future. You are the co-founder and the co-CEO of Pebble. It's based in Europe. What is it? What is your technical innovation?
Hi, thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to be here. We basically take CO2, the gas, and turn it into CO3. CO3 is a stable state carbonate, meaning rock. So as one of our investors likes to say, we turn CO2 into fancy sand, basically. As it so happens, this fancy sand also has some cementitious properties. So even as of today, we're able to replace some part of ordinary Portland cement, OPC, which is the main type of cement we use today, with our carbon-storing alternative binder. Here, you can see one of the world's largest carbon-storing buildings today. And my call to action will be to help us make this into a reality in not too distant a future in real-life buildings. Because why are we even here? Why am I here? I'm a former venture capitalist investing into software and hardware technologies. When I realized that concrete is the second most used material of all categories, only second after water, I thought, what if concrete could be one of the biggest solutions that we have as the world? And I believe that even if we capture 1% of the global emissions, we can turn this into a huge business. That's why I'm here.
Commissioner Hoekstra, we have heard from the world's largest cement producer. We have heard from a startup, what they are doing. We are talking a lot about Europe needing to get more innovative and more independent above all. What programs, what strategies do you suggest, does the Commission suggest?
Well, first of all, let me say that I think this solution is really cool, right? I mean, if you think about innovation, if you think about what the future might bring, and that is what makes me so optimistic about this, you will be meeting entrepreneurs all over Europe, in all sorts of domains, doing this type of really cool, meaningful, innovative stuff. I'm not the one who can judge who will be the winners in the future and what technology will bring the most impact going forward. But the mindset that we're currently having is to sow as many of these things, be neutral, be maybe even agnostic about who will win, but create the parameters for success for these type of companies. That, in my view, is the name of the game. By the way, that is exactly where the Clean Industrial Deal you were referring to comes in. It is meant for all companies, and it is, if you will, a business plan for Europe. But it is particularly meant for companies that we have here on stage. So heavy industry, extremely important, but also in a difficult stage of its development. And we need to make sure that they decarbonize, but are also successful in European soil. And secondly, the new kids on the block, companies like your own, truly innovative, willing to conquer the world, potentially extremely successful, but struggling to be successful all over Europe. So what is it that we need to do? And I'm not going to give you the whole 50-page version, but I'll just single out a couple of the elements. Yeah. One is be way more ferocious about a level playing field. Competition is great, but it needs to be fair for our European companies. So no longer heavily state-subsidized products from outside. Secondly, we've made life too difficult. And that is true for business, but it's frankly speaking true for many domains. So we need to simplify our lives. And that is an obligation for Brussels, but frankly speaking, also for national governments. Third, let's double down on innovation. Let's double down on these type of technologies. Let's double down on the grid technology, on renewables and storage capacity. That is by far our best bet into a cleaner, more independent and cheaper future. Last but not least, slightly outside of this domain, there is this ongoing debate about what we call in Brussels the Capital Markets Union. And that means in simple terms that firms across Europe should have access to capital that they currently don't have. If you look at the US, SMEs and companies at large, 80% of their capital, of their money, their funding, they're not getting from banks. They're getting it from investors. In Europe, that's only 20%. And that is because we're boxed into 27 geographies. That has to change. And the potential of that is enormous. So all of these things we should do going forward. And if we do, if we get that right, or even if we get that right only 80%, the future for business and for climate in Europe truly will be bright.
Marta, may I ask you to respond to that? Do you agree, and what do you need, what does it take to become a European champion?
I sort of agree, but I also sort of don't. So I think that Europe needs to legislate in favor of carbon efficiency. A carbon efficient economy is one that utilizes CO2 and makes a business case out of it. I think that dumping CO2 in the North Sea is not exactly a great business case, actually, for anyone, certainly not for taxpayers, by the way. So I think I'm in favor of carbon efficiency in the European economy. That's one thing. Second thing is level playing field in European companies. I agree with that, but you also need to create a level playing field between large companies, such as Holcim, and companies that are about 1,000 times smaller, such as startups. More importantly, it's about the consumers out there. We need to be able to have legislations that brings to market planet-positive materials as well as planet-positive energy. So I think that the EU should legislate and create test beds, pilot programs, sandbox environments for things like, concrete that is performance-based, concrete that is carbon storing, and enable governments to actually be early adopters and testers of products that can help us reach our climate goals at scale in real time. That's my answer.
Nordic Forest, biggest cement producer. What do you need, what would you like the EU to do? Where do you see the partnership there?
I think today's panel is evidence that the technologies to get to planet-positive concrete exist today. What we're lacking is the capacity to bring them to market at scale in a commercially viable way that's sustainable. So we're partnering with the EU to make sure that we're evolving our building codes and building standards to make that possible, but that equally procurement standards are put in place by public authorities to specify the most advanced types of materials. But equally, we're partnering with the most advanced startups so that we can take the most viable technologies, pilot them in our plants, demonstrate the proof of concept, and then scale them up across our operations worldwide. So what we need is to partner across the entire value chain to get the right incentives from a policy perspective to enable the adoption of these solutions, but then sharpen them to bring them to market in a commercially viable way. And that's what we're focusing on, connecting the entire set of constituents to make this happen.
Great ideas. Yes, go on.
I just want to add something. Actually, I've been a bit harsh on Europe, but actually I think Europe is doing a great job in increasingly facilitating capital for early stage technologies to make it through the valley of death, as one would call it. We at Pebble have been able to scale 1,000-fold, first a pilot facility, and now we've just launched our demo facility a few weeks ago in the Netherlands, by the way. And that was partially co-financed by the EU, or by the Netherlands and then by the EU as well. So I think that there's a lot of positive momentum. You just need to keep on going at it.
I'm going to add to that because we also are able to advance in our technologies thanks to 7 grants that we have across our operations from the EU Innovation Fund. So definitely heading in the right direction.
Work to do, but we can do it. Yes.
No, you're seeing we're solving all the problems just here on stage. That's really reassuring.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Marta Sjögren, Nordic Forest, and Wopke Hoekstra. Thank you for joining us and for being here at the Austrian World Summit.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep it going for our panel. And one more time for the incomparable Hannelore Feit for moderating so deftly as always. We appreciate it. I don't know about you guys. I love Vienna. And I know I'm not alone because Vienna's consistently voted globally one of the most livable cities. Now, I don't know if you heard this. Did anyone take public transportation coming here today? If so, clap your hands. Did you? Public transportation, clap it. By the way, I appreciate some of you started to raise your hands and then you heard me say clap and you did that. Well, you might have heard the Wiener Linien. Am I saying that right? The public transportation operator here in Vienna has a new chief mobility officer. Now, for those of you who didn't hear it, let's listen to the message from the new CMO.
Hier spricht euer Chief Mobility Officer Arnold Schwarzenegger live from the Austrian World Summit, unserer großen Umweltkonferenz heute in Wien. Danke für euren Einsatz für einen gesunden Planeten. You're all real climate action heroes, helping to unite in action and terminate pollution.
I mean, I know that was a twist none of you saw coming. Like, whoa, it was Arnold. Well, right now, I'm joined by the Chief Climate Officer for Vienna, or Chief City Counselor for Climate, Jürgen Czernohorski. Come on up here, Jürgen. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Jürgen. So you're the Chief Climate Counselor. Now, I understand here in Vienna, elections have just been held. A government is still forming. You're coming up with your plans. So what are the latest plans from Vienna in terms of the environment?
Yeah, first of all, welcome all of you here to Vienna. It's a big motivation for the work we are doing. As everything Arnie does, it's a big motivation, especially for the local level. And exactly 1 hour from now, our mayor is presenting his program for the next 5 years. And I can assure you, it's a program with very many plans that show our commitment to our goals, our commitment to working on terminating pollution, to transforming our city with one main goal, which is saving and maintaining being the city with the highest quality of living, even in the years to come for the further generations. Come up with a 5-point plan for the next 5 years. First, we want to even increase the amount of green spaces in the city. Vienna has more than a half of its city surface covered with forests, with parks, and so on. Second, we want to continue phasing out gas to heat our buildings. Third, we want to regenerate the nature environment because we are sure it's a very, very important prerequisite for the good life of everyone, especially for the human beings. Fourth, we want to expand renewables because we are sure the sun doesn't only send a bill, it actually doesn't send a bill, but it provides us with clean energy, and we want to provide the Viennese households in only 5 years, 1/4 of them with sun-powered energy. And the fifth thing is we want to transform our city inside or towards a circular economy because we are sure we need the resources we have in our communities. We want to be a zero-waste city. And all these things together are our way, our style of kicking ass. There's a lot to do, and we are very, very motivated to do so.
Well, I love that. I hope the mayor leads off with that, our 5-point plan for kicking ass here in Vienna. That will definitely go over well. That is spectacular. I wish we could actually get this 5-point plan in Los Angeles, where I live. Now, one of the goals that had long been a part of Vienna was climate neutrality by 2040. Do you think that's still a possibility with the new government, these new plans?
Definitely. I think one thing is combating climate change is a huge challenge, and a challenge that big comes with setbacks. But as Arnie said, we shouldn't do any whining. We should focus at first on the thing we have already achieved. For example, Vienna has cut its CO2 emissions in the last 15 years by more than a third. And in the last year of measurements alone, in 2023, our CO2 emissions sank by more than 11%. So that shows our measures can work, but it shows this is only the beginning. And that means we have to be brave, and we have to be bold, and we have to focus, and we have no time to lose, not by being discouraged by something, and not by thinking about what could we do else, or instead of working on a climate change, because baseline or the bottom line is it's about the good life for everyone, and there can't be anything more important for politics than that.
Well said, Jürgen Czernohorski, our climate counselor for Vienna. Jürgen, thank you for sharing that message.
Talking about well said, congratulations for pronouncing Czernohorski. You do it better than the average Austrian.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, we are all set. We're missing one person, but here he is. Welcome, welcome. I am very much looking forward to this panel discussion. In a small country like Austria, we lose a lot of soil every day because of land sealing, around 12 hectares daily. That's about the size of 16 soccer fields. So let me quote Kurt Weinberger, the CEO of Austria's hail insurance company. He says, soil is a non-renewable resource. If we lose it, we lose our independence in supplying food. So we want to talk about that. Before we dive in, let me briefly introduce the panelists who are joining me on stage today. Nico Rosberg, Norbert Tocznik, Wolfgang Grabherr, Shaila Darmos, and Todd Wagner. Thank you for being here. I want to start with you, Minister Tocznik. Since March, you're also responsible for climate policy. And the issue of soil loss is not new. It's been discussed for years. A goal to reduce land sealing to 1.5 hectares per day was already announced by the last government, but never implemented. So Austria continues to lose 12 hectares, as I said, of soil per day. What are your concrete steps? What will you do to change that?
Thank you very much. It's 2.5 hectares per day.
Yes.
Is our goal. Austria has a long-standing tradition of implementing sustainable soil management and practices. But despite this historical commitment, action remains necessary to address new soil protection challenges. And this is precisely why we developed the first ever national soil strategy in Austria. And this demonstrates our commitment on a national level, even if it's not legally binding. But my minister led the development of this soil strategy together with the federal provinces, municipalities, and cities. And our joint goal is to limit land use in the next years to 2.5 hectares per day. And I think this strategic framework is very important, and it has been already adopted by the federal provinces, and established clear parameters for sustainable soil management and national conservation. I mean, the main elements of this strategy are to protect open landscape, farmland, to prevent urban sprawling. Third point is efficient inner development. The fourth element is rising public awareness and stakeholder engagement. Additional to this all, we set up a monitoring system to track land use and land sealing, and we expect the first valid data package this December 2025. My approach for implementation approach involves collaboration with the federal provinces, because they are responsible for spatial planning legislation. So we need the cooperation. Maybe some examples we discuss at the moment. For example, there's the designation of agriculture priority zones, or setting up land take compensation mechanism. And finally, another measure, another part is that we promote the reuse of build-up for already built up areas like brown fields to avoid further soil use in the future.
So to sum it up, you're sure there will be a change, right?
Yes, of course.
So let me switch to you, Wolfgang Raab. For those who haven't watched the startup show 2 Minuten 2 Millionen or 2 Minutes 2 Millions, that's our Shark Tank in Austria. And your company received the highest investment ever made on Austrian TV. You are the CEO of Sun AG. And on the show you have said that you provide a solution with your product called Mini Meals. Can you give the audience just an insight? What are mini meals?
Well, mini meals are a solution. They are saving 90% on most of the resources which we need for food. And we will present it today in a press conference at 2 o'clock, and it will show how efficient a new type of food is. And it's called high-performance food, or in German, Hochleistungsnahrung, which means we need only about 800 calories to provide all the nutrients which the body needs, and not 2,700.
And I want to give that to Nico Rosberg, because your team raced in the Extreme E-Series full electric cars, and in 2024 you worked together. And with mini meals you worked together. So what were the shared values or goals that brought you together?
Yeah, hello. Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Yes.
Hello, everybody. Great pleasure to be here. And yes, in fact, we raced together and against each other also with Wolfgang and Extreme E. And Extreme E was a very innovative championship in racing, which for me was awesome because it united sustainability with racing. And I think many of you will agree maybe F1 is not the most sustainable. Do you agree? Yes, no, kind of, maybe. And Extreme E was really racing for the planet. Fully electric cars, racing in areas to raise awareness for the problems that climate change is causing, helping, supporting the local communities. You can see behind there, this was in Sardinia. This is in Saudi Arabia, but before it was in Sardinia, where there was the big the big forest fires, which took out 1,000 hectares of forest, and then we planted together 20 hectares of new forests. So really trying to contribute, and that was wonderful together with Wolfgang, a wonderful experience. And by the way, we became world champions also. That was very important.
An applause for you, clearly.
Thank you very much. And for me, it's a great pleasure to be in Austria, because most of you won't know, I actually went to the kindergarten here in Austria for half a year. So I'm a little bit Austrian at heart. And the last time I was in Vienna, I picked up my Formula One World Championship trophy right next door from where we are here. So this was my last time. So a lot of nice memories here in Vienna and in Austria in general.
And today too. It's so nice to have you here. Shaila, I want to follow up with you, because you're a person who clearly knows what healthy soil means. Your father founded the first organic farm in Greece, and today you continue his legacy. That's what I read. So what does healthy soil mean to you?
Yeah, healthy soil is actually the foundation of our lives, I would say. Healthy soil means that you close the cycle, that you are not extractive. And we can see this really in all the farms where you have an extractive model, where you have a monoculture, you just don't have healthy soil. You see our farm in the background. We have a very diverse agroforestry system, which actually transitioned by itself to agroforestry, which is incredible. So we just started observing nature and trying to understand the basic patterns that underlie nature. And circularity is a very big one. I would like to say that in the farming sector, we fall prey to the same problem that we have in all our society, which is extractiveness. So whatever solution we might find, we might point out, might it be called clean energy, we need to build into the DNA of whichever solution we propose. We need to build in there that it's not extractive, but that it's nourishing communities and that it's in people's hands. Like as Arnold said, we need the people with us. That means people need to be decision maker and people need to benefit from it. We cannot take 1000x returns and then think, oh, why are people not stewarding their livelihoods? Well, they can't. So this is really essential to nurture our soils, to implement the basic patterns of life.
And to protect the soil. Thank you so much, Todd Wagner. We're really happy to have you with us at first. You're a successful entrepreneur in tech and media, and you are well known for introducing streaming with the launch of broadcastfm.com, not FM. Among your many projects, you also founded Food Fight USA. What is it? Tell us about it.
Yeah, I think the best way to kind of give some perspective, I'll spend maybe a minute on what the problem is. It's a little unique in the United States versus Europe. It's actually much better in Europe. And then a little bit about what we do to try to solve the problem. You know, the best way to me to frame this topic is, you know, in the States, we've got a food industry that feeds us but pays no attention to health. And we've got a health industry that heals us but pays no attention to food. And because of that, they're like ships passing in the night. In Europe, you've got the EFSA. So you've got one government entity that oversees food from the farm to the fork. You have what we call the precautionary principle. So basically, if something is known to be a carcinogen or some harmful effect, it's banned. There's independent scientific review. There's cumulative effect study. All of that's in place. The United States, to use a technical term, is kind of a shit show. It's the opposite. So we have the FDA, we have the USDA, we have the EPA, 3 different agencies regulating different parts of our food supply. The FDA is famous in that the F is silent. They've not cared about food for 50 years. They've focused more on drugs and medical devices. So what has happened in our country, in Europe, you have about 400 approved chemicals. In the United States, we have 10,000. And that has happened. The villain of this story, frankly, is the tobacco industry. So after they settled in the United States in the 1980s, they went out and bought big food companies. They bought Kraft, they bought Nabisco, and they used the same playbook. Gee, we're good at making things addictive. We've done it with nicotine. Why don't we do it with food? Let's call it hyperpalatable, make it addictive, and see where this takes us. But they had to exploit something, so they exploited a loophole called GRAS, which we don't have time to go through, but it basically was used for chemicals that were safe in our food supply. They instead exploited it and hired their own scientists, did their own studies, no cumulative effect studies, and all of a sudden, we now wake up with 10,000 chemicals in our food supply. That translates into ultra-processed foods. You may have heard that word. UPFs are basically, I call it the straw that stirs the obesity, cancer, diabetes drink. It's these concoction of chemicals that subvert your metabolism and create the issue that we now find ourselves in. In the US, it's estimated 70% of our diet is ultra-processed foods. In Europe, it's closer to 20%. So what does it mean? We've waked up with the following. We have a nation, again, the United States, that's chronically ill. 75% of our country is either overweight or obese. We have 38 million diabetics in our country. We have only 22% of our young people that can even enlist in the military because of obesity issues. It is a problem. And so what Food Fight USA does is the following. We've gotten very involved in state and federal legislation to key on to what Governor Schwarzenegger said earlier. We started with California, and Arnold actually helped support the first piece of legislation, which was the California Food Safety Act, made it bipartisan. We met with Governor Newsom, and we got it signed into law. That banned 4 known carcinogens out of our food supply, of which 2 are now banned nationally. California went back and did the California School Food Safety Act. We were very involved with that. Now there are 30 states in America with different kinds of legislation copycatting what California started. You're going to see state AGs involved in this. We're involved in front of package warning labels. We're involved in trying to reformulate ingredients so that our foods are safer, just like they are here in Europe, along with regenerative farming.
Well, thank you for, yes, it's your applause. Thank you for sharing that. We want to come back to Europe, and we heard problems that are happening in the US. Minister Tocznik, if you look at forecasts, we are facing an increasing shortage of food supplies. For example, in Austria, harvests of wheat and potatoes are already going down. So what is your long-term plan in this case?
Yes, I think we have to see first the background, the global background, and there will be approximately more than 9 billion people in the year 2050. So we need a lot of food in the future, and the EU plays a very important role in this because the EU contributes to feed the world. If I look to the exports, the agribusiness exports of the European Union, they are in 2024. There was a trade surplus of 235 billion euros. So the euro is the biggest exporter, you have to imagine. And what contributes to this in Europe, it's the common agriculture policy. This is also a very important point for the future. If I come down to, or let's go down to the national level, Austria is very famous because of his very sustainable agriculture policy. Our strength lies in our small and medium family farms, and they not only produce high quality food, but also deliver renewable resources and also take care about our landscape, which is also very important for tourism. And the point is that they have very important knowledge, and we have to ensure to preserve this knowledge and to have a look that this knowledge passes from one generation to the next generation. But in what we are investing now, we are investing first of all in our agriculture education system. We have a very good education system in Austria. I think it's one of the best ones in the European Union. In the federal provinces, there are more than 70 agriculture technical schools. And on the national level, we have high schools, technical high schools of agriculture. And every year, more than 5,000 graduate from these schools, 5,000 skilled workers. This is a lot of men and women power, you know. And this is the first. And the second is we also invest in research into climate-fit crops, into better plant protection, and also to improve our agriculture practices. As long as natural and a very one point is we have to reduce waste, food waste, and also to improve our distribution systems.
So we heard a lot now about Austria, and I wanted to ask you about your campaign, Race for Soil. What is it?
Well, it's started 14 years ago when I joined a conference like this in London. And there were a lot of people on talking about environmental issues, and I scratched my head and didn't know where to start because I just felt going home and wanted to do something. So I started to analyze all the things which are important around sustainability and studied the FAO databases. And when I learned that we are losing about 1% of our arable land per person over the last 50 years means we lost 50%. Like we had 3,600 square meters per person, and we are thinking about you living on an island, on your own island, and you need soil, and you're losing 1% of it every year. That was for me concerned, because that means in 50 years we are still losing 50% more. By the fact, UNESCO just gave a warning out to all the member states that if we don't do something, by 2050 we might have lost 90% of our land, degradable. So that's something I wanted to do something, and that's why I created mini-meal as a solution. As Arnold said it, you need resistance to pump, and we need something to take into the hand. And that was my idea. And with that, I went to Antarctica and showed that it's possible to do only with 800 calories the same power and have the same energy climbing the highest mountain with only 1,000 calories per day.
So you wanted to do something, yes, as Arnold said in his speech. Nico Rosberg, that would bring me to you. You also founded Rosberg Ventures, which manages a $100 million fund. So what made you move into the world of startups and founders? And maybe you'll tell about your next steps?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm a venture capitalist now, and because the world of startups, they're going to be the biggest companies of the future, of course, and the impact that startups can generate is enormous, and I'm very excited to be involved in that very deeply. I was just in Silicon Valley again just recently, and in fact I invested in something that's very interesting, because in agriculture there's also a huge lack of data collecting for now still, and that causes a lot of inefficiencies. So I invested into a company that has developed cameras with computer vision that can go onto the existing trucks and all the kind of machinery that's moving around the farms. And as a result, then using AI software and everything to collect all that data and propose efficient manners to run the farm, including even weather data and data on the fruits, the health, the amount of fruits and everything. So that's something I'm very excited about, the opportunity for startups to have enormous impact.
So one part is collecting data. Todd Wagner, you told us a lot about Food Fight USA and about the problems in the US. Now I want to know, would you like to work also with farmers in Europe?
Yeah, so, you know, the first remark I made was really about the FDA. Now we're on the USDA lane, and I'll talk about working with farmers in Europe. You know, in the States, we have been growing monocrops now for 60 years. And by monocrops, I mean it's just soy, it's just wheat, it's just corn. Corn is a perfect example. Maybe 1% of the corn grown is actually eaten by a human. 99% of it is turned into high fructose corn syrup or ethanol, or fed to the animals, which turns into the omega-6 inflammatory conditions that people have. So the Farm Bill is a big part of that. And crop insurance was put in place to be able to give the farmers an ability to grow that. But now we're at a different place. And since World War II, we've used a lot of what I call the sides, the pesticides, the herbicides, the insecticides. And what that's done, and we referred to it earlier, is the topsoil. We've lost half of our topsoil in the Midwest, the part of the country I'm from. And they estimate within 50 years our topsoil will be gone. So yes, we are huge fans of regenerative farming. Mm-hmm. Crop rotation, cover crops, low or no tillage so we can have carbon sequestration, all the things that everybody up here is an expert on and understands. But we have to flip in the States, the USDA, to be able to understand that conventional farming needs to be the exception, not the rule. And that this kind of regenerative farming can be scaled. That's the world I understand as technology. It can be scaled. There's tools available. In Europe, we're working with Campo Verde, who's a company out of Germany who leads the way with Demeter-certified foods, and we're trying to get more of that into people's hands.
And that brings me to Shaila. Maybe you could just tell us, what would be your ask from policymakers? What needs to be done?
Yeah, so there are actually a lot of things. And also with EARA, the European Alliance for Regenerative Agriculture, we actually published today the biggest study of regenerative agriculture in the world, where we actually look at all the farm data and also the economics behind farms such as ours. And we prove what service we provide, ecosystem service, regenerating the water cycle, biodiversity, and that it is indeed actually economically viable. So what farmers actually need is a simplification in terms of bureaucracy, because now many farmers have to fill out too many forms and don't have time for farming actually. But also we need to invest a lot into education. In Greece, farmers manage about 45.5% of the land surface of Greece with close to zero education about ecosystem functioning. So we have floods and we have droughts. A farmer needs to learn how to manage an ecosystem, otherwise it cannot be successful. And we need to incentivize improving soil health instead of some eco schemes and some methods that might be totally out of context. So if we want soil health, we have to reward soil health. And with EARA, we present precisely how that can be done.
So thank you for sharing these important points. Nico Rosberg, I wanted to finish with you. Since you're here with us, let me change the perspective for a moment, just to finish it. Athletes are role models. We heard Arnold Schwarzenegger at the beginning. How can athletes inspire people to make a difference? What would you say?
Well, Arnold is the best example. We are here because of the success that he has had as an athlete, of course, not only, but that is the foundation of his success. So that's the best example. We have such an opportunity because we have such an enormous amount of people following us on social media, in the media, everywhere. So it's really an opportunity, and to be a good role model, to show the way, to show that we care as well, and hopefully get everybody who's following us to join in the journey. And that's also a reason why I'm here today. I have 2 daughters at home. They're 7 and 9 years old. And I want to also inspire them on a journey in future of contributing, to the world and to society.
A perfect sum up. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you. And thank you to you for listening.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, all right, you can already see who I've got up here. Ladies, I'm really excited for this next panel. And by the way, a round of applause for all the panels we've seen. I thought Monica, these panels have been great. It had Alex Michelson and Todd Wagner out here bringing the thunder. Okay, we got the studs. All right, listen, I'm really excited for this next panel because this next one's all about sport. And we know sport is so important to us, whether you participate or you're just a fan. But we know there is a relationship between sport and climate issues, whether sport is driving emissions or whether the athletes are being impacted by it. So we wanted to have a panel where we had athletes who were, while competing at the highest levels, were also advocating for a clean earth and for getting rid of pollution. So we got 3 pretty big studs right here. We have German world ski champion Felix Neureuter. F1 world champ. We just saw this guy, Nico Rosberg, straight out of Central Cal. You are like one of the coolest guys. And oh yeah, this guy, Austrian tennis legend, Dominic Thiem. All right, the home crowd was loving you. So one of the things I loved is all you guys, you competed at the highest levels, but all of you were getting involved in caring for the environment. So Dom, I want to start with you. What was it that drew you to the production of clean energy, and what you've now started your own foundation, Team Energy. So take us through your journey, bud.
Yeah, exactly. I already knew in the middle of my 20s that after my sports career, first of all, I want to jump into a completely different topic. Of course, I will always stay with tennis, but I also want to do something completely else. And this completely else, I have the feeling that it has to contribute to the whole community, but also to the planet. And with founding Team Energy, that's our goal, to contribute not only to the planet or not only to the community, but to connect those two. And yeah, I hope that we are on a good way with that.
Well, I love hearing that. And Felix, for you, you started the Felix Neureuter Stiftung, and I hope I'm saying that correctly. So talk about your journey to being so climate conscious and what the Stiftung is doing.
So first of all, thank you very much. You are for me the American Rainer Pariasek here in Austria. I'm pretty sure you know him. It's that's the biggest compliment you can achieve.
Man, somebody record it and explain it to me later, because I'm already smiling.
So this what I am doing with my foundation is, in times of digitalization, I think it's very important that we bring kids out to the nature again. The playground must be the nature, not the smartphone or the computer. They need to move, they need to do sports. So we created programs together with the University of Munich. We go to the different schools, kindergartens, etc. And we try to educate them. We now have in the program we already reached about 600,000 kids. And then we created a new program, which is called Nature Heroes, Naturhelden. So we also go to the different schools. Now we have 500 schools in Germany. So we get about 50,000 kids. We have the program. The lessons are not in the rooms anymore. They are out in the nature. They collect the waste. They learn something about the waste. So try to educate them because they are our future. We need to take care about them.
That's beautiful. As someone who was once a young boy trapped in a classroom, I love that idea about getting outside and really learning that way. Nico, I loved your comment earlier when you said when you think of Formula One, you don't think of conservation. You don't think of saving the earth.
I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable, honestly, because Dominic was hitting a tennis ball across the net, and you were skiing down the mountain whilst I was blowing out carbon dioxide from my engine for all these years. So I think, honestly, I have the most work to do in the next years compared to the three of us here.
But as you mentioned that, how does that journey happen as you're involved in a sport that obviously is based around the combustion engine and making that stuff go as fast as possible? What was your journey kind of saying, all right, now I have this other concern that is kind of between the worlds?
No, the journey was just from the experience from sports. It's a very ego-driven experience. Yeah, it's just for me. I want to win. And once that was over, I just decided for myself that I wanted to find projects where I can contribute to society. And as I said before, one of the most important drivers is my daughters, because I think it's very, very important and valuable to go on a life's journey of contributing. And I missed out on that completely when I was young. I grew up in Monaco, and I did not see anything about contributing to society. So I'm catching up, and I hope to give my daughters a head start on that understanding of the importance of that.
I love that, but growing up in Monaco does sound pretty cool. Am I right? I mean, I will say I love that message too. My wife is here. We're 11 weeks pregnant.
Which one is your wife?
Where is she? She's over there. Hi,
hello.
I know. I say we're pregnant, but as she consistently reminds me, it ain't we, punk. I'm the one carrying this baby. I love you, honey. So, for the kids, for the future, and Dominic, as you're talking about with Team Energy, what are your next steps?
Yeah, we want to give everybody in Austria the chance to get clean energy. Like everybody can join our energy community. So yeah, if somebody has like a apartment in Vienna or in any city in Austria, doesn't have a chance to get solar panels, we want to give everybody the chance to get clean energy from other members of the community who can give their electricity to the grid if they have too much. And our next steps is to grow the community, also to maybe make the energy topic for the next generation a little bit cooler, I would say, because all those words in German, Bürgerenergiegemeinschaft, it doesn't sound that cool, I would say, for the next generation. So our goal is to give also kids, the new generation, a chance to get used to that topic a little bit, and of course grow the community and get as many people as possible to get clean energy, to have fair, stable prices, and that's our next goals.
Well, I do love that. I don't know how it was where you grew up, but in America, when you talked about clean energy, we had hippies who were the people with the long hair and the kind of colorful shirts. But they weren't the people. You had the posters of the athletes on the wall. That's who kids were impressed with. So I think when I'm looking up here, you three champions being up here, making clean energy cool for the next generation, I love that you guys are a part of this messaging. And Felix, to that end, with the Stiftung, where you really are reaching that next generation, are there partnerships or collaborations that maybe here in this audience we can facilitate to grow this thing?
Of course, everybody can help. I mean, it's kind of sad that you need programs for that. Normally, it should be normal that it is like that. That the people know, okay, how to treat the nature. That they take my waste again back home and put it away. So, but yeah, it's not like that. So, of course, we need help. When you try to do something, or when you do something, first of all, it costs money. That's it. I try to collect as much as possible. So we are on a really, really good way, and of course we try to reach even more kids. But now I'm also an ambassador for the United Nations, so it's about cleaning the mountains and the glaciers, trying to create like a healthy ecosystem in different countries, and so this is also a big next step for me. So yeah, the next years they will be exhausting. I have 4 little kids. 4 little kids at home, so they also need their father. But yeah, I'm ready for it. I'm ready for the future and try to look at it in a positive way and not in a negative way.
So this is interesting, and obviously you're someone who's a high achiever, and you guys have been very generous with your time. So I'm going to close with one question, and I'll let all 3 of you answer it. But I would love to hear, and Nico, we'll start with you. As an athlete, I think the lessons of sport can be the lessons of life. So what were the key lessons in sport you learned that, as you now start on this journey in climate, what do you think are the lessons that were most applicable that you would like to share with us? Was there anything that stood out for you?
I wasn't prepared for this one, so I'll let Dominic go first.
Okay, all right, Dominic, did you hear that? Like with the lessons of sport,
so
was
I have
it
more
the
time to think.
perseverance, or what would you say those hard lessons that you learned being a champion in your sport that you think carry over and are helping you have success in your new endeavors?
Yeah, I would say all the journey. I think like ski world champion, Formula 1 world champion, the US Open title, that was just like, I would say, maybe the end of the journey for us too, at least, I would say. So the way there with all the mistakes, with all the resilience you need to have, I think that was the biggest learning, what I can also take now to entrepreneurship, also to my next chapter, where I want to help the community, where I want to help the planet. I think it's as well a very long and a very hard way, but yeah, I was walking on that way already once, and being able to be on that way once already, I think should help me to do it a second time. Of course, we need to work all together in this. Tennis, I was needing a little bit fewer people, I would say. But no, I think that all the way, all those 15, 20 years of experience, of doing mistakes, of falling down, standing up again, I think for sure is helping me a lot in this next and second chapter.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, we can all relate to making mistakes. Not all of us have won a U.S. Open, but you get the point. Felix, for you, Nico, I'm going to let you. You're going to hear another answer before you get to come. What about you as a world champion skier? I mean, to me, what you do is insane, pushing your body out there on the ice, really on the edge of just catastrophic wipeouts, not to bring it up. But what were the lessons you learned that you carry now?
When you don't risk something, then you will not achieve anything. So you need to risk something to be successful, but you need a good plan. That's it. I love to risk. Always. This is what my sport taught me.
I love to risk. And finally, bringing it in at 200 miles an hour, our Formula 1 driver. Nico, what about you?
No, I love these answers, because I didn't really know that it was like so present for all of us. But for me as well, I am not scared anymore at all of failure. I failed so many times in front of 100 million people laughing at me for failing, for crashing, for doing something stupid. I'm just not scared of failure anymore. So just as these guys said, now we're ready to take risks and have a big impact. And of course, from sport also, the importance of teamwork. Yeah, working together. We know that better than anybody else, because alone you cannot achieve anything. In my case, actually, the team was the biggest out of us, because we had 1,500 people in our team at Mercedes to build just for the 2 race cars, 1,500 people. Every person mattered. And so, yeah, we also know better than most people how important it is to collaborate awesomely within a team to achieve great things.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. The 4 champions! That's what we're calling this panel. Felix Neureiter, Nico Rosberg, and Austria's own Dominic Thiem. Boys, can we get a photographer? Let's do our champions photo. Let's do a cool one here. Okay. Oh, we're doing a selfie, guys. All right. Just stand kill. All right, here we go. I know he's going to crop me out of this one, but... One more time it for our three champions, ladies and gentlemen. You guys are awesome. Thank you, guys.
So, you saw the images. Over the last years, we've seen more and more extreme weather events, and we know they will become more and more. But now we want to speak with some first responders, with everyday heroes who are there when the climate crisis hits our societies. So please welcome with me two everyday heroes, Victoria Zechmeister and Dom Bay. Welcome. Thank you. Welcome. No, it's perfect here. Yes, yes, you can stay there. Thank you so much. So, Victoria Zechmeister from the Austrian Fire Brigade and Dom Bay, firefighter from California. Thank you so much for joining us and for being here today and share some stories with us and share with us what the climate crisis is making with your work. Victoria, I'd like to start with you. In September, Austria was hit by major flooding. So, can you share some numbers and what were you doing there?
Yes, September 2024, there was an extreme weather event causing floods in Vienna and primarily in Lower Austria. It's starting in the night from the 11th to 12th September. The air temperature dropped from over 30 degrees down to a few degrees Celsius above zero. The following days, heavy rainfalls caused in floodings.
There we can see the images and the pictures, yes.
And the amount of precipitation exceeded 300 liters per square meter, and in some parts of Lower Austria, 400 liters per square meter in 4 days. That's 4 times more than in the whole month of an average September. And on the top of it, there were storms with 90 kilometers per hour. We had to deal with overflowing rivers, dam breaks and landslides, but not in Vienna. There were flooded streets because the sewer system was overloaded and couldn't drain the amount massive of rainwater. We had to, there were uprooted trees and broken branches, flooding because of low-lying areas and in buildings and in garages. And the lower fire department, the fire department from Lower Austria, received 18,210 emergency calls during this weather event, with a peak of 938 emergency calls on the 15th of September, only between 6 and 7 o'clock in the morning. And it was the same day when the Vienna Fire Department experienced a record day of interventions. It was the busiest day in its history since its origin in 1686. We had to deal with 1,400 interventions in 24 hours and 3,500 interventions in 3 days. Normally, we have approximately 350 interventions in 3 days. And during this event in Eastern Austria, 25,000 firefighters, volunteers, and career were on duty only on the 15th of September and more during the whole period. Our work was only to do damage repair, clear the roads from trees and broken branches, pump out water from buildings, and there were also cars swept away by the massive water of the overflowing Wienfluss. We had to make them safe. Fortunately, there were no people inside.
So there was really a hard day for you and for all of your colleagues. I want to ask you, Dom, because we all saw the shocking images from Los Angeles, from the fire in January. You were in the middle of it. Can you share with us, how was it?
Yeah, so very similar to what Victoria was saying. There are a few situations in our career, I've been a firefighter for 16 years, where you're just along for the ride. And I think Victoria explained it very well. I doubt that they were eating dinner that night or getting much rest with all those calls. The Palisades fire, I thought in 2017 at the Thomas fire in Ventura that I maybe would never see something like that again. And the Palisades fire was an experience. There's some images there. That's on Sunset Boulevard. So really an event that was unstoppable. And we were just doing our best to save what homes we could and make a positive impact for those that were experiencing this incredibly tragic emergency with the fires throughout California.
So there's no doubt that we will see more of these events through climate crisis. How are you and your teams getting ready for that?
Yeah, so here's a stat that I realized this morning. When I went on that fire in 2017, the Thomas fire was the largest fire in the history of California. I thought that that record would stand for quite some time. Today, that fire is the 9th largest fire in California, meaning that 9 out of the 10 of the largest fires in the history of California have occurred in the past 8 years. So this is a very frequent occurrence. It's something now, there's no longer a wildfire season for us. That used to be when the Santa Ana winds occurred from October to around January. This is now year-round. We plan for it, we train for it, and folks are on standby and ready to be deployed throughout the state at any given time for an emergency.
So would you say it's the same in Austria?
Yeah, it's nearly the same. We increased training how to fight wildfires, vegetarian fires, and work with air operation, how to communicate with helicopter pilots, requirements for successful cooperation compared to what we did the last decades. When there are wildfires, sometimes we get help from helicopters, from the police, from private institution or the federal army, and so we need the trainings with them. We re-evaluate trainings. We do a lot of adjustments. We make continue education. We exchange experiences, not only in Austria with the Austrian Fire Brigade Association, but also across natures, across the nations, with the European Firefighter Association and international with CTIF. It's an international association for fire and rescue services. We purchase more suitable equipments for flood protection, like high-capacity pumps and flood protection, mobile flood protection, and so on. And we work to encourage people to be a part of fire service, whether they become firefighters or support the fire services in another role, particularly in the rural areas. It's very important to recruit voluntary firefighters and that they stay in action. Voluntary firefighters in Austria don't get paid for their work, and they respond to call-outs from their home or the workplace. And fire services and the ability to handle all the operations are only possible with a good, helpful and powerful team. So that's a very, very big thing for us to do.
So with everything that you shared, what would you say to decision makers? What needs to be done?
Yeah, so, you know, Arnold, I think he's in interviews right now, but he always used to say firefighters have one of the hardest jobs in the world. And I actually think we're blessed. Our job is incredibly easy. It's simple. The climate scientists and you entrepreneurs that are looking to study this and make a change have a much more difficult job. For us, we get a call, someone needs help, we show up, we help them. It may be physically tiring, mentally and emotionally, but we show up. I think in today's day and age, everyone wants simple answers to our most complex problems. You all as climate scientists and entrepreneurs, my only thing is, you know, continue to study why this occurs. Don't let the demand from the public for a simple answer water down how complex these issues are, because in California, as you guys know, we have aging power line systems, an aging electrical grid. We have arsonists potentially that take advantage of social media and news hysteria to start fires. And of course, there is a climate component where we are seeing higher amounts of high wind-driven events with low relative humidity, which causes these devastating fires. So to the scientists, keep studying, keep giving us good answers, and hopefully we can find a way to turn things around and decrease some of these large, devastating fires which are becoming more frequent.
Would you say there's hope?
There's always hope. And again, on brand with Arnold's message of stop whining. As firefighters, we do whine a lot, full transparency. It's part of our birthright is to whine and complain. But we love our job. We show up, and I promise if you call and need our help, we will always be there. So there's always hope as long as there's folks out here that are willing to do the work and help out each other and get through these events.
Oh, we think we need an applause for this. Thank you. So, Victoria, I also want to ask you, what would you say to decision makers?
I would like to appeal to people's sense, to the responsibility and resilience. If someone feels capable, they should maybe, for instance, remove a broken branch on their own, so freeing up the emergency services for more critical situations. And ideally, people almost educate more for self-protection, because the better prepared the public is in situations like floodings or blackouts, the safer they can act. And that, in turn, eases the burden on emergency services in major disasters.
So also for you the question, is there hope?
There is hope.
Always.
Always, yeah. With all the people and all the team. So, like Nico Rosbeck said, there's a team with 1,500 people. In Austria, we have a team with 355 firefighters. So, we all together will check it, and if you need help, we will come and help you to make this safe.
Both of you. Thank you so much, Dom Bay and Victoria Zechmeister. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
My God, is that music majestic or what? I'm very excited for our next panel. We have three people who, as Arnold would say, are kicking ass and helping terminate pollution. And they're from three very interesting groups. With me on stage, we have Sasa Braun from Interpol. Joining us on the screen, we have Fiona Donovan from the World Central Kitchen. She's coming to us from Maine. And we have Carol Devine with Médecins Sans Frontières. Forgive my French there, Carol. But that is also known as Doctors Without Borders, coming to us from Toronto. So first of all, thank you all three for being here. So Sasa, I want to start with you. And by the way, this guy is one of the most fascinating people I've ever met. He is the senior criminal intelligence officer on pollution at Interpol. He is 007 for pollution. I think they're going to make a movie, and Pedro Pascal is going to play him. So Sasa, oh, wait a second. Come on. You knew he had the glasses. Oh, my God. Seriously, I want your aura, brother. I know the word aura. That's what's impressive. So here's what I want to ask you. At Interpol, how are pollution and criminal activities connected?
I need the microphone. Yeah, no problem. Let me start very briefly from the beginning. So environmental crime, we need to understand, is the third biggest criminal sector in the world. It comes right after counterfeit products and drugs. So Interpol perceives environmental crime in 5 different crime areas. So we are dividing into forestry crime, fisheries crime, illegal mining crime, pollution crime, and wildlife crime. And I can guarantee you it's full of organized crime, it's full of terrorism even, we grill our sausages on charcoal that is or produced by the Al-Shabaab or Boko Haram, and we don't know about it. We have organized crime groups here, corporate crime, we have private brokers, so many criminal stakeholders that we cannot believe. To give you one example, I've been myself in Nigeria on the ground in an operation called Aurum, targeting pollution, crime, illegal mining, and also deforestation. What I've seen was terrible. I was a couple of weeks on the ground, and you see really women and children in totally polluted areas, mercury, cyanides. You see illicit trafficking and a supply of tramadol, heavy painkillers. Once you get polluted, your nervous system goes down, you have heavy pain. So they pump into people that are, by the way, forced labor. We're talking about modern slavery in the field. It's not terminated in 1865. It's still available, unfortunately. So people working for $1–2 per day, dying, being contaminated with mercury, and then pumped with heavy painkillers. It's a tragedy.
But that is a very sobering account. Fiona, we're going to turn to you. Now, you're the VP of Response Administration at the World Central Kitchen. So just explain to us, what is World Central Kitchen, and explain your role there, Fiona.
Yes, absolutely. And it's so great to be with you all today. My name is Fiona Donovan. I'm the VP of Response Administration at World Central Kitchen, and I oversee our relief teams and operations globally. So to share a little bit about WCK, we are a nonprofit organization that is first to the front lines to provide meals in response to humanitarian, climate, and community crises. What we do is actually very simple. We feed people. But how we feed people is what makes our mission unique. And there are a few key elements that really define what we call the WCK way and how we respond to support communities in need. So first of all, we move urgently and are often some of the first people that show up when a disaster strikes, particularly in hard-to-reach places where other groups can't or won't go. And part of what defines us is that we don't wait until someone tells us that there is a need for meal support. We see a crisis, and we quickly deduce that local capacity will become overwhelmed and respond to start serving food as quickly as possible. Secondly, our teams are really powered by local communities who lead our response efforts. We tap into communities as our superpower, and they guide us in the right direction as soon as we get on the ground. We know that locally impacted families know their neighbors, they know the most vulnerable populations, or the ways that perhaps previous disasters have hit the same areas and what the highest needs were. So we lean on these leaders and we empower them to be the architects of their own response and let them tell us where to go and who needs help. And then third, our meals are always culturally appropriate. We work closely with local chefs and culinary leaders to make sure that we're preparing and serving food that is aligned with the community needs so that we're not only offering sustenance and calories, but also comfort, care, and familiarity when everything else is destabilized. It's also really important to us that our response model is highly adaptable, and we make sure to respond in a way that meets the needs where they are. So no two responses for WCK are the same. For example, after the California wildfires this past January, we rapidly mobilized food trucks to serve meals to displaced families because we knew that the fire lines kept on shifting and that we needed to have a very flexible mobile feeding plan to fit the context. Whereas in Myanmar this year, after 7.7 magnitude earthquake, caused widespread damage across the region, we distributed 400,000 pounds of bulk food product to community kitchens so that families could cook for themselves. So we're always adapting and making sure that our response model really fits the needs where they are.
Well, that was interesting when you talked about that point about collaborating with the locals. I think that's a message, certainly, that we heard Governor Schwarzenegger talking about working locally. So, Carol, Doctors Without Borders, we often think of this group in moments of crisis, but you also serve long-term care as well. So I'm curious, what have you seen in terms of the impact of climate change that it's had on the operations of Doctors Without Borders?
Thank you. Thank you for having me too. And just to contextualize it, Doctors Without Borders started in 1970, 1971 by doctors and probably less known by journalists. And today, our human resources, our colleagues who are working on the climate crisis and many other interrelated health crises, there's 66,000 colleagues in Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, in over 70 countries. So the majority of our colleagues are living in the countries they work in. So 90% of our staff are locally hired. So I think what Fiona said and what you said, Arnold said about communities, they are really the climate heroes. But just to say, we recently did research. We wanted to ask colleagues in these countries where they're most impacted, what are you seeing? What are you experiencing? And then on the flip side, how are we responding? But on impacts, Matt, what we heard from a colleague in Haiti are ferocious impacts, profound impacts. So 3 quick examples. In Burundi, a colleague said that there was a flood and people's homes got washed away. And one of the worst part were the bodies that got washed away. So families can't even grieve lost ones. So alongside that in Burundi, of course, with warming temperatures. So you have these, exacerbating effects on health. In Honduras, we had colleagues on top of roofs because of the flooding, because of the cyclone. You have people on the move, people forcibly displaced. So you have these health impacts, but humanitarian impacts, and then livelihoods. And then in Bangladesh, where I worked for a short time, I mean, the constant threat of cyclone. Are there enough cyclone shelters? But the salinity intrusion, the sea level rise, and who's most impacted? The people who have done the least to contribute to these crises.
Right. Heartbreaking. Sasa, one of the things you were talking about, you talked about all the different ranges of crimes, carbon trading crimes, and we've talked about carbon neutrality. So explain, how does this happen, and how do you infiltrate this? How do you crack the crime?
Well, let me just jump back to another thing that I just want to mention, put the dots here together, because what Carol was saying, houses blown away, and also previously we were talking about cement, right?
Yeah.
And for construction industry.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, illegal sand mining, almost nobody knows about it, is a huge disaster for the environment. The sand, you cannot take it from the Sahara, you take it from the rivers, from the coastal areas, because it's sharp, and you need that for the cement. What we don't know is like 80% of the world trade been unknown of origin, so they steal sand globally, and I've seen myself in Gambia what's happening. They steal the sand, export it to Asian countries, it goes into construction, nobody knows where it goes from, goes into the Middle East, etc. And houses blown away from people, rivers change the direction, rivers totally dry out, huge loss of biodiversity, just for you to know. And now let me come back to your question.
Yeah. No, that's a really feel-good story now. Don't trust any buildings you're in. That sand could have been stolen in the cement.
Exactly, that's the thing. Carbon trade, as mentioned in Carbon Crooks in the documentary, if you want a fast and untraceable crime to commit, carbon is the perfect candidate for you, and that's a true story. Originally, it is a good idea, carbon trade emissions, cap and trade system, to have it controlled, the emission, to buy the certificates, have less exhaust, less emissions. On the other side, also to invest in climate protection projects, reforestation and stuff like that. A good idea initially, but a lot of fraud. We saw a lot of organized crime jumping here into. We saw a lot of tax evasion. We saw a lot of fraudulent projects that don't exist, where certificates are issued based on fake reforestation projects, where the market was flooded with certificates, and where there was no incentives anymore for companies. They wouldn't exhaust less, they would just buy certificates. So to make a long story short, it's an immature market still, because lacking a lot of regulations, and it's more a business model than climate protection. And how we address it? Intelligence exchange between law enforcement, nationally, internationally. We catch up with multi-agency task forces to get a holistic approach. We try to convince countries to have a stronger control and stronger traceability of certificates, stuff like this. But it's a big money-making issue. To be frankly speaking, it's a bad story. Yeah.
Wow. I will sleep better knowing the 007 of pollution is on it, though. So Fiona, you talked about the World Central Kitchen being right there as natural disasters happen. Have you had a chance to be a part of a first responders team?
Yes, I have. I've been with WCK for almost 6 years and have been on the ground leading our responses dozens of times. One of the most significant recent responses was Hurricane Helene last fall. We began our response to the devastation caused by the hurricane in North Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, and Florida, and the storm caused unprecedented impacts across the 4 states. We served 1.7 million meals and distributed 2.2 million gallons of water throughout that response, and really saw that climate-related disasters are getting more unpredictable and more severe. And in North Carolina, our response model included many different facets. We partnered with local restaurants to serve meals whose businesses were really suffering due to loss of power, water, sanitation, and for months later, the lack of tourism as well. And we set up a massive field kitchen in Asheville, North Carolina, that at its height was cooking 30,000 meals a day. We also worked with local NGOs and churches to set up localized feeding hubs and community kitchens so that local community members who already knew who and how to serve meals had the infrastructure and the financial support needed to accelerate their efforts. And we were actually in North Carolina supporting the community through April of this year, as many residents in remote areas still lacked access to power, water, and food. So that's a big part of how WCK operates. We stay for as long as there is a need that we're able to fill, and we don't have any firm deadline on how long we're on the ground. Another example of one of the largest and most complex natural disasters I led at WCK was the Turkey and Syria earthquake in 2023, when we served over 20 million meals across the region. So we set up 14 kitchens. We were in Turkey, we were in Syria, navigating in a conflict zone as well. And, really for us, part of being on the ground is listening to the community and listening to the people and making sure that they have a voice in the response.
Well, you all have been very generous with your time. We have time for one final question. Carol, I will submit it to you. We're here. This is so much about having leaders here, politicians, influencers. So what would you and Doctors Without Borders request from policymakers to